Don't mind me. Keep doing what you're doing. Do, 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 do. Oh, hello there. My name is Shaz. I'm doing videos about my life. If you're just joining us, you probably won't have any idea what's going on. But if you've watched all the videos up to this point, then you probably need to do something else with your life because you have too much time on your hands. But I don't know. How many videos has it been so far? Like 40 gigs? 80 or so videos. So we'll say maybe like 60, 70 hours. There's as many episodes of Gotham, right? So, but these aren't thematically set to like the pacing of a show and shit like that. So, um, but I'm gonna watch all these. I'm definitely gonna watch all these. BQH unfinished. So this is interesting. I think I have to explain this. Look at her, Shaw. I put Shaw on the cover. Brown queer on high. Cutback locked up, sent to die. She might get mad because then people can go find her. But first of all, her look is a little different. She looks so young. A little 23-year-old, 24-year-old Shaw. And second of all, she's such an attention whore that she knows she looks good, so she won't complain. But yeah, that's my first love. I mean, like I had like the girl in middle school that later on I lost my virginity to, and then I had the Addie the addict that carved out a place in my heart with her spoon and her syringe and her fucking ties and her craziness. The most creative person I've met in my life by far still. And when we play music, she'll like, no one else can really keep up with like making up words and lines and, but what is the life partner? The one with the creativity, the one with the heart. So Shaw had the best heart out of anyone I know. And that's why she could be like the dominatrix. Imagine this girl wrapping her hand in plastic wrap and then sticking her fingers in icy hot and then sticking those fingers in someone's asshole. Like, that's that sweet girl. But nah, she was very beautiful, and she's a very beautiful person. And also what I notice here is my infatuation with color. I've always felt like, well, covering my blind spots, and then also the way I deal with love and women, I feel like wisdom comes from a synthesis of thesis antithesis, which is something that's like Hegelian dialectic. Without reading that shit, it's just like I see it in history. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I've already thought of that. I should read it eventually. I should probably brush up on my Western philosophy or philosophy in general to make sure I'm not reinventing the wheel too much. But eventually I wanted more and more perspectives. And so this idea of fracturing stuff into different colors, I use that in real estate, and then I'm going to use it for my presidential campaign. That's actually where I got that idea, is in real estate, when I would break down my process. I had a company and I had people I was trying to train. Sometimes I would hire on people or have independent contractors, and I would explain it to them the way I explained it to myself. And the way I explained real estate to myself was through this stepped process. And I had 6 steps because I had 6 colors. It starts with art. So see, not only the way do I heal myself through art, but the way I explain complex topics. Art is compact information, is how I feel. Art is compressed data. Emotions are compressed data. Art begins with a lump in the throat, like Robert Frost said. Art is emotions compressed into aesthetics, which are compressed data. See, aesthetics maybe being the code by which we translate the compressed data of art, which is emotion laid on top of aesthetics. There we go. The form is the aesthetic, the emotion is the data, and then our internal artistic eye to recognize beauty is the machine language, if you will, in your mind to unpack that emotional data. That's pretty good. I'm glad I'm recording this. So fucking the colors has something to play with that. So when I went into real estate, my artistic mind first made that for the Rent for Less NYC. Rent for Less NYC, I just borrowed it from Food for Less. Food for Less is a local Southern California grocery store. So I put Rent for Less. The number 4 also, to be clever, I believe that website should be short. So Rent for Less, R4L NYC is 6 letters. If you could get it to a 6-letter or less domain name, I think you're one of the clever ones. I think adding the funny endings other than a .com or not coming up with a six-letter domain is like just shows your, I don't know, maybe we'll run out of them, but I've always been able to get my stuff down pretty low. I have Lilash right now. Lilash is a pretty good one. Share Apps is not six, but it's close. 500 RE was pretty good. That's 5 letters. 500 RE, 500 Real Estate. Those are my real estate brands. I should try to sell those. Those are probably worth money. I haven't even put any effort into selling them. I'm over here bugging my mom for $5 in the morning so I could go down the street and read with a cup of coffee. I should, and I might be able to get 10 grand out of my real estate, or maybe I'll keep them. I'm not sure. We'll see how this project goes. But yeah, so that's my aesthetic side showing itself even then. There's this desire to go past the dialectic of two to have like multiple different ways of looking at stuff. So this, each color I guess represents brown, queer, high, cut back, locked up, sent to die. I used her, I sent this to her. So even though she was in New York, we're still talking. We reconciled after this and we got back together. I drove out there. That was an interesting trip. I'll talk about that a little bit. Well, there's not much to talk about. Craigslist, I had a car at the time, the car we were sleeping in, a Honda Civic, a 2006 maybe, a blue one. Craigslist rideshare, who wants to go with me across country? I reconciled with Shah. I wrote this, I sent it to her. I felt like, all right, I'm going to fucking sell this book. No, I never finished this. I abandoned the project like most. And found 2 girls from Britain who were selling their panties in LA to fund their trip. And I think one of them was a school teacher, so they were like normal, down-to-earth girls, and they were around my age. We were around mid-20s. But they're just wild, and they're like, let's fucking get some money while we're out in America. And one of them was afraid to fly, so they wanted to get back to New York, and they were flying out from New York back to London. And while they were out here, they were selling their used panties on Craigslist. So I was just with the dominatrix. I'm very open to sex work. They weren't having sex with people for money, but there's a lot of freaks out there, and more power to you. So they're selling them 100, 150 a pop. They would wear them for a day, meet the guy in a public place, take them off in front of him. You'd be across the bar from the person, and you just do a little sexiness, take them off. And now the guy gets to interact with you, gets to know you, warm, and go home and do whatever they want with the fucking panties. It's like, it's weird, but if the guy uses it to jerk off for the next week, then like what? He paid $5 a jerk off session or something like that. I don't know. We could judge people, or we could just be happy that they're finding a way to do their own thing without hurting anyone else. And they're funding this girl's, I mean, like, these girls could be doing worse things to fund their trip too. So all I did is we had a bet while we were driving across country, and about something stupid. How long was it going to be until we found a hitchhiker or something? Well, like, one of the panties was the bet. So once I won the bet, I wrapped the panties around the rearview mirror. So I had one of their panties that they sold around my, so that was cool. And we picked up a dude, so it was like me and the dude and them two. And then it was just me and them two. But the energy was like really sexual, and I think one of them was into me, but I learned after that, all these little lessons you learn in life. If I wanted something to happen, I would have had to pick. And one of the girls I think was into me, and then the other girl was just flirting with me. And I didn't figure that out. So I started putting more attention in the one who was flirting with me, and then the one who was into me. You have a couple chances. That's what this last Tinder girl, if you don't capitalize on those couple chances, then sometimes people shut down their, like, did I reject you? Did you reject me? So I think it was like a 2-day, 3-day trip. And I think the door was open like the first or second day, but after that, they were pretty much over it. And when I dropped them off in New York, it was like, all right, see ya. There wasn't really any lingering, which I was going back for Shah anyways. But now you see what's in my mind. Do I want to play? Do I want a relationship? Well, I want a relationship out of loneliness. I want to play out of youthful exuberance of like, I need to get more experience. If I had more intellectual integrity and honesty, then, and how could I judge other people, I guess, when I don't exhibit this? But I'm at a point now where I'm trying more to, and that's why judgment is projection. When you judge people, usually it's just you're reminding yourself of stuff you've learned. If you leave it there, that's good. You don't have to really fucking, so like, all judgment really is like pointing fingers at yourself. But, well, I mean, but also you want to, that's what, maybe you're helping someone else when you judge too. We all correct each other. But just to acknowledge back then, my head wasn't. So I got back with her. I mean, and then also she's figuring out her shit too. And I stayed in New York for a little bit. And then I went back. Oh, I gave up that car because I wasn't paying it. I let the repo man get it. I felt kind of guilty just running from the repo man. So I was like, fuck it, I called him up. Probably one of the few people who actually called him up. He was surprised. I was like, where's it at? I told him the street corner. They were there within a couple hours. He called the guy he had in New York. But yeah, I'm going to give back a car that they've been looking for the last year. They didn't waste any time. And then I had no car out there. And then I had a trip back, another cross-country trip. But the trip out there with those girls, so one of them, I think her name was Nadia. Maybe the other one's name was Nadia. But the black girl, we're just talking about, we're young people, and that's another thing. Young people are so judgmental. They're talking about their sexual experiences. I'm talking about mine. We're talking about other stuff too, but yeah, being more understanding opens you up to stuff. I think I was a little judgmental about them, and when they were going back to New York, then they would be stripping in a place in New York. So in LA, they're selling their panties. And in New York, they were doing a topless dance thing. Not full nude, but just topless. But they had their hustles. They were being young girls, fucking wilding out with their sexual energy and seeing how far they can get in life. While also, I mean, like, those could lead into bad situations, but ours were good. I wasn't a bad guy, and I wasn't perving on them. I think one time they stayed in the tent. Yeah, we had a tent we slept in twice. And one time I slept in the tent with them, but nothing happened. But that was probably the night that things were still open. But I would have had to probably like decide on the one who was actually into me and stop doing this half and half thing with the other one. And the girls, who knows, on the girl side, one might have been cock blocking the other, or who knows. How you look in the eyes of women is so variable that like at one point they might think, if they're like into these like alpha macho dudes, like, oh, this is the dude. But what I've noticed is women have a framework of guys who are fuckable, and you can kind of tell when you're in that framework or when you're out of it. And that's interesting if that framework isn't really the framework that of the person you want to be, because now you can pretend to be that person, which I have done. I've noticed the type of guy a girl would fuck, and it's pretty easy for me to fit into that. But as you get more and more people who appreciate you for who you are, you get tired of putting on these roles. So I try to like acknowledge what someone's looking for, but be like, look, I'm like right here, but like if you want to be open with your appetite, I think we might have. But this is all like subtle shit that you don't talk about, but this is the dance. It's like, all right, I see what you're looking for, but like I'm pretty cool over here too, but like I have enough pride now and experience, and I'm not starving, so I'm not going to walk my ass into being a bullshit person or a bullshit role. Like, I'm pretty cool over here. But which just, I guess, filters out the fucking people in my life that I don't want to fucking pretend to be what I'm not. But back then when I'm younger, I was willing to pretend to be more stuff. So I'm like, I see this girl's like, and I think a lot of this is subconscious too. People don't even realize that they're doing it. You don't realize you're conforming in order to get laid until you have more selfless love and more women who love you for who you are. And then if for whatever reason you're single again, if that doesn't work out, next time you're a little bit more comfortable being yourself and being sincere, because you know that that works. Whereas until that's validated, you're fronting a lot, and that's that young energy that I feel. It's a lot of fronting. People don't know how to be themselves because they haven't seen that that works. But once that works, you're like, wow, to be anything else, this is so much easier. Just fucking instinctually do what I feel I should be doing at any given time, within reason. You don't hurt people. You don't. So the girls, I wasn't really feeling it, and then I was starting to realize that I can be a little bit too much back then. Didn't have enough experience to really like. It's like 2 girls. I was later on in life. I actually had 3 girls I was given a tour to. In the ocean, we were going through these mangroves, and something could have happened there, and it didn't. So it's a tough thing to do. I lived with 2 girls at once. To manage multiple female energy at the same time, especially if you're pursuing one or multiple of the girls, is tough. You got to keep, like, when people swingers and this and that, it's like managing a lot of people's energy is tough. So because you don't want that negativity, which kills shit. Especially like someone like me who's like sensitive. It's like, I don't fucking want people to feel bad or like this or that. So, but so with those girls, I think so. The second night I slept in the car, and I gave them the tent, so that way it wouldn't be weird. It's like, this should be doing something, but it's not. I'm not really sure why it's not. I thought one of them was into me, and then I think I got it wrong. I'm just gonna sleep in the car. And I think I told them I masturbated in the car though, and they thought that was hilarious. So we kind of got the sexual tension out. If you ever want to de-escalate a sexual situation, nothing works better than talking about it, but you're probably not going to get laid. You're probably it's nothing is, to me anyways, in my experience, nothing is less sexy than talking about sex. So if you want to de-escalate it, then, and that's probably this Tinder weekend thing, all that talking was very unsexy to this girl who is used to living in the moment. But I'm in a talking mood. But I know I'm old enough now, I think, or I've had enough experience. I know when I fucked up. I know when the window is open and when it's closed. It's like chess or anything else. After a while, you just start to trust your intuition. And then that plus just being a little bit safe about people's feelings and comfort level usually gets you through most situations. Some girls are like super complicated puzzles. That's the dancer girl. But that's what I love. She kept me on my toes. We were both very equal. When she came to me telling me that she had just hooked up with her ex, I had already hooked up with someone the night before. Like, I knew when she was wandering before she would tell me, like a week before. And I usually like started wandering myself. So we were like, but I felt like we were getting into a back and forth type thing. Which a city like New York, you have so many options. It's not like from the outside you might be like, oh, these people are like whores, they're sluts, they're players. It's like, no, in New York there's just so much temptation. You just live there for a couple of years and you date a little bit, and you'll have a roster of people that you're just comfortable fucking. And then now when you date new people, you have to figure out when you're ready to be exclusive with that person. But you always have someone you can call up to, and then you live in a nice area like me downtown. You can just go to a couple bars that night and you're probably going to run into someone that you have a connection with. I was at this bar and these girls came. They were from London, two girls from London, and I smoked a joint with them out front. And I thought I lost them. We got too high and I just wandered home. And the bartender, I went back like a couple days later and she was like, those girls were looking for you. They came back. It's like you just have to hang out somewhere in New York and eventually you find your tribe. But that dancer girl, me and her, she was unique, and I think I was unique to her. Anyways, this is a first love. This is Shah. And not the first love, but the first relationship. And what did I write? So I don't know why I didn't stick with the why I'm right because I felt like I needed to learn more. I was going far left and far right to break down the political spectrum, but I acknowledge that I hadn't yet read anarchist history. I'm just reading it now, but I've lived it through Occupy Wall Street, and then I read David Graeber, who's an institutional anarchist or an intellectual anarchist. So I've seen it in practice at the bottom of society, and I've read the top intellectually, and now I'm just rounding out some of my stuff about the history of the theory. But back then, I knew that this was above my pay grade. I don't like speaking too much on stuff I haven't lived. So then I shelved that project thinking, all right, I know that's a blind spot. Like all the other stuff I felt good about, I felt like the far left I was a little bit blind about. I knew of anarchists, but I hadn't really been in that scene. So then I was like, fuck, let's just get together voting blocks, coalitions. And this is really funny because this is all of the political books I read this last year preparing to run for the presidency of the United States. This is where they leave you. They're always like, get into something you're passionate about. Find a passion, find a group and join it, whether it's environmentalist or feminist. It's like, no, that is identity politics. That's emotional triggers. Let's be, God bless the passion that everyone has in life. But the world is not suffering from a lack of passion. The world is suffering from a lack of reason. That we're being irrational through our emotional outbursts, and we're being emotionally pitted against each other. So it doesn't set off a red flag. It didn't set off a red flag back then, but after this whole year of thinking about my whole life, and then listening to these narratives and actually paying attention to the world, and just taking the space out of taking energy out of trying to survive and putting it back into interpreting the reality around me, I started to realize how much we're being emotionally triggered. And I can back that up through scientific and then also anecdotal, and recording my parents right here they could sue me if they want because it's illegal to record people without their permission, but I've been documenting our conversations, and they're being fed emotional triggers constantly from the media, their media sources, Fox News, other avenues. But back then, I find this really interesting. I predicted Occupy Wall Street in Why I'm Right, which I guess is going to go into my book proposal. I didn't realize I was so on point on the. I didn't predict it, but I think it accurately depicted the environment out of which sprang Occupy Wall Street. It's like now I can put that into why I'm right, and it would make a lot more sense. Back then, I talked about the Tea Parties, but I didn't really have a balance thing. And they weren't the balance of the Tea Parties, but it was in that evolution of those types of movements. And it received its own form of corporate funding and stuff. But I stopped that, and then I was like, let me just get a coalition of identity. So I was going to get Mexicans or undocumented, gay people, the right to change your consciousness, alter your consciousness, or marijuana activists, but also psychedelics, prison reform, schools, education, cut back, prison reform, locked up, and then sent to die was going to be the sixth. So soldiers, prisoners, students, marijuana activists, gay activists, and undocumented. It might still have a part of the overall presidential campaign, but back then I think I got to a limit where I was like, I'm just asking people to act emotional. That's not logical. Little did I know that was, so that's funny. Why I'm right and Brown Queer High are both the impetus for and the destruction of the Occupy Wall Street movement, both written a year before it happened. So those two works plus my Complete American's Guide to Revolution shows that in the zeitgeist, which is why I took the time off from my life now. I feel like I've been ahead of the zeitgeist, or at least in the thick of it for a minute now, because I've been less socialized and more reading and paying attention to history and our place in it in the current time period. You don't have the time or energy to do this if you're just trying to build a beautiful life. So I guess I've been skilled enough to maintain a decent amount of socialization to still function as a normal person, to be able to sell stuff. I have to be charismatic and I have to be able to make friends. So I'm decent at making friends and making love too. Making love. The Shaz is decent at making love. But making connections with people, whether romantic or otherwise. So, but let us read this and find out why I abandoned it. I think I have time. Brown Queer and High, cut back, locked up, sent to die. There we go. Let me unplug this bad boy. This will be the last thing we do today. Yeah, we've done like 3.5 hours. We'll do 4 hours. Brown Queer and High, cut back, locked up, sent to die by S.B. Barrick. 2010, copyright by David McNerney, a.k.a. S.B. Barrick. See, I didn't change it legally yet. That always bugged me. That logo at the top, shazbarbarrick.com, I drew that. Just one of those impulsive, creative moments. I just was holding myself away half an hour. I drew the little California logo. It's pretty cool. ISBN to follow, smiley face. I'm so cute. My phone number. This book is currently blah, blah, blah. If you'd like to see it in other formats. See, I was so funny about money, asking people to contribute. I just didn't know how to approach that. The cover model is the author's beautiful fiance. Didn't really treat her like that. But whatever. I was still confused as far as, I was still figuring out how honest can I be and still express my full sexuality, which is something I'm still figuring out, but I'm more honest now than I was then. And I think that's all you owe the person that you love, or all you owe in a sexual relationship is honesty. Because tell someone if you have something. Fucking tell someone if, you missed your period. Tell someone if you're seeing someone. Tell someone if this sexual interaction is going to get them in danger because there's going to be an angry male lurking somewhere. So just honesty avoids all the bullshit. So the more, you could be a swinger, you could be monogamous. I don't even know what I want to do, but honesty corrects towards a healthy relationship, right? Preface. Flash politics. Political thought and political instinct prove themselves theoretically and practically in the ability to distinguish friend and enemy. Carl Schmitt. I am 28 years old and I have never cast a vote in my life, and I am not alone. The United States has been plagued by poor voter turnout since I've been alive. We live in the most powerful nation on the planet, which reasonably makes us the most powerful citizens in the world. Yet the ranks of apathetic non-voters seem to grow with each election. When did so many Americans become convinced of their impotence? Why do 30 to 60% of citizens consistently decide that their votes do not count? Short answer, because individually they don't. This is the unspoken tragedy of democracy. One man's vote, cast in secret, according to personal bias, is worthless. It is a penny tossed into a wishing well, a secret wish you dare not speak out loud. It is an unsubstantiated expectation, the intangible, well-worn concept of hope. It is one step above a prayer and a far cry from a political action. In contrast, a pledged vote is the actualization of political capital. It is the voter announcing to the world, "Here's my vote, make me an offer." The voter stands at the head of the auction and regains his rightful place as a master of the political industry. He joins with other like-minded voters and shouts a full-throated command. Voting blocs demand attention. They leverage their power for maximum effect before a single vote is cast, shaping the entire political process. Why have I never voted in my life? Because I have never been properly organized. Because early on, I recognized the futility of the individual voter in the wilderness, and I distrusted the bureaucratic party machine. We are indoctrinated to believe that our only options are the solitary wishing well or the blue-red factories, and those of us who have reservations are excluded as independents, translated into potential Democrats or Republicans. Modern political parties are not voting blocs. In fact, they are the exact opposite of what a group of pledged voters would look like. Amorphous and internally contradictory, their highest loyalty is to the party machine itself. And in this sense, they are the quintessential bureaucracy, self-preserving, alienating, cancer-growing, and collusive. One could run for either major party primary on any given platform and, if elected, find a niche in the blue or red duopoly. All that is expected in return is absolute loyalty. And here's a fatal, undemocratic flaw of the party structure: a subservience of values to hierarchy, issues to institutions. The party apparatus is what allows a president to run as a fiscal conservative and then, once elected, mortgage his country's future to voluntary wars of aggression that will cost over $1 trillion and counting. $6 trillion now. It is by these political gymnastics that a 2006 Congress can ride a wave of anti-war sentiment and then ignore their mandate. When you vote for a political party, you aren't voting for an issue or even a block of issues. You are essentially pledging loyalty to the whims of that specific party. Political science has evolved into the art of smoke and mirrors to hide these whims while telling the public what they want to hear. Both parties antagonize to divide and conquer their share of the electorate with their respective broad brand of propaganda, while the real conversation occurs behind the scenes. Often, if not always, both parties share the same overall goal. Thus, you can have the overt collusion of George H.W. Bush's administration writing NAFTA and Clinton signing it without skipping a beat, Bush Jr. setting up the bank bailouts on national TV, and Obama knocking them out of the park. Because when it comes down to it, the only voting bloc the two parties represent is a corporate voting bloc. And with the election of Obama, it seems that we've transitioned peacefully from the natural resources wing of the corporate sector to the financial services. What would a human voting bloc look like? How would a person navigate an issues-based political landscape? Can 30 to 60% of America band together without a party structure? Political parties are the confusion of identity. They are the substitution of money for organization. They are anachronisms in the age of open information. You know who you are. You know what is right and what is wrong. If you wanted to, you can determine what is factually correct as opposed to just fabrications. If you wanted to, you could flash mob a candidate of your own creation into any given office in the country. You could dissolve the oppressive myth of the two-party system with one election cycle. It's easy. Just stop believing. Stop hoping. Organize. Flash politics. Welcome to the political after party. So this was, the flash politics idea was a platform to subvert the political parties. And then now I believe that I should just, as I made money and did real estate and I got more used to just execution, the science of execution, let's not be too fanciful. And also I am starting to recognize after Occupy Wall Street and then the narratives playing out in the media since, that too much identities and factionalism, and I was going to just, this would just add fucking gasoline to that fire. So I'm very suspicious about organizing around like gay identity, like soldiers, about we need more unification. So, but the writing is good. So a lot of this might go into the platform for Flash Politics. We're just going to go through the front door. We're just going to be open and transparent about our intentions. When people say you can't start a third party, it's a two-party system. Great. One of those parties is going to go extinct. It's happened in the past. There was a Whig party, there were other parties. So our party is going to be one of the two parties. And the fucking other two corporatist parties can combine. So that's let's just be direct. We're just going to have that conversation on the front steps, the front door of America. There's no reason to like, this was making it too complicated. And that's where the insecurities, once you edit out the insecurities in your life, it's like, fuck all the bullshit. Let's just have a straight, direct conversation. We're just going to walk straight up into the shit through the front door. We're going to stop me from starting political parties, the conversation I'm having. It's like, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to ask permission. I'm not going to, that's the anarchist way. That's the fucking prefigurative. Don't ask this government to build a well. Don't fucking petition. Don't protest. Just dig the fucking well. And then like fucking make plans for if they try to stop you. It's legal to start a third party. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it in such a way that we're going to actually, one of the parties, if not both of them, are going to go extinct. So if we will be proven right by the execution of our ideas done according to strategy and tactics and the laws and science of execution based on the latest methodology. Because Shaz knows a little shit after living in the real world. Introduction. I think we can do this within a half hour. Dignity. The state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. Respect. Due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others. So I think, yeah, I was making my argument as an appeal to emotion and let's just get up, dignity. And then it's like, it's so funny. I was ahead of the time and then fucking, I saw that in Occupy Wall Street, examples of people fucking screaming their beliefs through emotional. And I guess this whole year has been to get more control of my emotions because I've seen how dangerous it could be. But that's where I was headed when I was younger. And that's why when I read all those political books, I was like, fuck, you know what I mean? The Bernie Sanders and all those other people, that's all they have is emotional triggers. It's like, then I'm ahead of them about the political science and theory. Is that they're where I was when I was fucking 26 or 28 is how I feel. Truth number one, party organization in America. Oh, you know why they are though? Because they spend most of their time raising money. They don't have the mind. They don't have a clear thinking head because they don't spend most of their time meditating to get a clear head. I spent a whole year just fucking listening to my thoughts and paying attention to the feedback between my thoughts and my actions and the people in my life. And I audited my life, and I've been auditing my life, auditing through this, auditing my views of life and the different aspects of my life. Including like sexuality and drugs and other stuff. But I'm wondering, should I have my little 22-year-old friend, like, am I helping her by fucking doing drugs with her? Am I hurting her? And fucking other stuff. But I'm being transparent so that way if I have blind spots, they can be corrected by others. I'm inviting correction. But these people, they spend half their time raising funds, or a majority of their time. And then of what time they have left, a large fraction probably is spent rationalizing why they're not a bad person for spending majority of their time raising funds. So how much of it do they actually have for honest introspection? And can they even afford honest introspection without endangering? They have to believe they're good people, but they spend so much time and they have so many contradictions that like that's all their mental energy. They don't have any mental energy and a clear mind to actually push ideas forward, to progress. And that's why you see these people who are in the public spotlight for so long have no development of character. Bernie Sanders is the same angry old white guy he's been since he fucking started. Barack Obama, all he has is his same narrative he started with that he's selling us, plus this shitty healthcare plan. He hasn't evolved as a character, as a person. He has more gray hair, but like, he fucking hasn't grown as a person because he hasn't spent time on himself. Because all he does is defend a shitty story, which is a false narrative to cover up the fact that he's a corporatist shill, is my take on it. But truth number one, party organization in America is anti-democratic. American politics is a successful business and a democratic failure. It makes sense that representative democracy would be stressed by the realities of an increasing population. In 1911, the United States Congress fixed the number of voting members in the House of Representatives at 435. Since then, the United States population has more than tripled, leaving the same number of representatives to deal with an ever-increasing workload. But the failure of our political establishment should not be blamed on this decrease in proportional representation. With the advent of modern information technology, we've long passed the communication singularity. No matter how fast the world population climbs, our connectivity grows faster. Logistically speaking, political organizing has never been easier. This is all before Occupy Wall Street. And we have been organized, just not towards democratic means, and certainly not in our own interest. The democratic deficit, the disparity between what voters actually want and what their elected representatives deliver, appears higher than ever before. Anti-war momentum translates into troop increases. Demands for universal health care survive as a watered-down public option. Political parties act as inhibitors to democracy. Their priorities are enmeshed in dynasties, corrupt practices, and subservience to the wealthiest citizens who consider themselves the true owners of society. The rich own America Incorporated. We just work here. This anti-democratic mentality is seen in the pyramidal hierarchies of political bodies. Policy and propaganda is manufactured at the highest levels and then filtered down to be forced upon the constituents. Presidents don't want your policy input. That's what experts are for. If they want thinkers, they'll ask their think tanks. Your job is to submit votes like rubber stamps for decisions too important to afford your input. This is the purpose of a political party, to make decisions for its members and gain their support for premeditated policies. As for the small tendrils of democracy that happen to make it up through the cracks of the political sidewalk, these are to be pruned and whittled down to innocuous nubs, if not rooted out entirely. What politicians call governing isn't. They are a distinct ruling class with an authoritative mentality more suitable to babysitting than representative democracy. Successful politicians broker deals for elite interests while managing the expectations of the people they are supposed to be serving. Lack of political will becomes a euphemism for those sticky situations when constituents' demands are ignored in favor of corporate interests. In response, we consign ourselves to cheer from the sidelines for a game that's been rigged far in advance, shouting at each other to vent misguided frustrations. Truth number 2, the structure is maintained through fear. Parties accomplish their agenda through an elaborate and expensive indoctrination structure capable of escorting a voter from first political blush to the ballot box, acting as a responsible political chaperone for a naive and innocent electorate. I lost it. For a naive and innocent electorate. Oh, I had that mustache picture at the beginning. That was cool. For a naive and innocent electorate. That's where I was at. For a naive and innocent electorate. Okay. Because, as they remind us constantly, it's a scary world out there. If you're not a Republican, then you run the risk of being taken advantage of by those Democrats. If you're not a Democrat, then you're doomed to live in a cage with the rest of the right-wing knuckle-draggers. And if you don't have the patriotic conviction to choose between the two, you run the risk of somehow failing in your civic duty. I suppose this would be the duty to be manipulated. Since these false identities are politically convenient creations, they need to be constantly propped up, lest they fall under the weight of their own fallacies. This is mainly done through the use of fear as a motivational tactic. Apart from a minority of well-paid ideologues, the party system and its proxy media can only organize through fear and anxiety, a poor substitute for passion. Fear-inspired anger props up astroturf organizing, and where it doesn't, the hollow party structure implodes on itself even faster, i.e. the dissolution of Obama's campaign trail support after his election. Once the reality of the mirage set in, angry suits have a longer political half-life than empty ones. So I guess my argument here, it's all good, but I wouldn't agree with... So I'm on that tip now that they organize through anxiety and fear, and I feel like now I'm more talking about including the psychedelics into the discussion with the practice of derealization. I find that that's helped me clear up my head this year. practicing psychedelics really is a practice for seeing through propaganda, and that's why I think they're outlawed or decriminalized, because they help you challenge your assumptions, and a lot of your assumptions are based off of faulty information from birth when we live in such hierarchical, dominant, colluding, manipulative institutions. But I back then I thought that you break through it with passion, but I've seen very angry, passionate people who are still confused. So I wouldn't agree with that now. Which is why by the time I got to the end of this argument, I was like, this could be. I haven't read Marx, but I read the quote that Marx didn't call himself a Marxist by the end of his life. I don't think Christ would call himself a Christian if he looked around at what was being done in his name. So I knew that just because I could put words on paper, which these are good words, I like a lot of this writing, but I was like, I'm not quite sure if it's done. This might be. That's why I've always been the reluctant leader, even in the army and wrestling, is when people start following me, even in Occupy Wall Street. If I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, I get a little worried, because I could get anyone, like I sold shit for a living. So I could sell timeshares to Canadians. I could fucking I could stop people and sell them on Greenpeace on the street. But like, so I could sell them on shit even if it's wrong. So I have like a high threshold, and that's why I get hard on like the fucking flag fuckers like Joe Rogan or other people. It's like, you have a responsibility to your platform to know that you're not corrupting them with bad ideas, which means you have an intellectual responsibility to show your work. Show us where you get your ideas and inspect those ideas constantly. Otherwise, you might be spreading bullshit and claiming ignorance, or claiming that you're an entertainer, or me claiming that I'm just an aspiring writer. I've never felt like that was a defense. If I felt like I was going to increase the greater suck in the world, then I think that would be immoral. And when I got to the end of this, I was like, I'm just asking people to be more emotional, and that's not a good enough argument for me. I've read enough history to realize that a lot of bad could come out of good intentions. And even now when I'm reading this, I know I'm going to not agree with some of the stuff. The writing's good, and some of this is good, and some of this would make it into like a flash politics platform. But that's why this year, when I started this year about the Zen Buddhism and stuff, it was all about being able to lower my energy and increase my humility first. So that way, if I get myself in the corner again where I feel like I have an idea that I'm pushing out there that isn't holistic, that I could like unwind it. We have to, if we're going to create great tools to change the world, let's also at the same time create checks and balances. That's the wisdom, right? Of even if there's any wisdom in the Constitution, it's the checks and balances. So if we're going to be ready to stomp our foot on the gas and work with speed and efficiency to outpace the corrupt hierarchies, let's also have a break or emergency break we're developing at the same time, just in case we take a wrong turn. And I think there's some wrong turns in this logic. The public feels the ebb and flows, or maybe I'm just justifying my laziness. I just didn't want to finish it. But that's why I trust my intuitive logic, like my intuitive wisdom. There's a reason why I didn't finish these things. I didn't think they were ready. I was like, I need more life experience to add to this. Like, this is sort of right, but like, I feel like I need to live more just to, I knew I needed to hold money before I like wrapped up any real political theory. I was like, I need to have a little money in my hand just to see how it feels and make sure not just money in my hand, but like I got to see some decent bank accounts and talk to some people who've done some shit, so I see what a financially responsible life looks like. So it's like I was judging the other side a lot, and then once I served them in a broker manner, I met some really cool people who've done some cool shit. Who, like, to run with a tribe of money, you realize that they shouldn't all be vilified. You might think you know that from the outside, but to really identify with the tribe and stop objectifying them, you have to actually be a part of that tribe. I hooked up with my neighbor down the hall, and she was 37 and I was 36 at the time. Yeah, I just turned 36. That was this year. And I feel like that's when I finally, like, they've accepted me as their own. She asked me at one point, she was like, before, that was the night we were going to probably hook up. She was like, let me just get this straight. Like, you're not paying your landlord, because I stopped paying my landlord. I was doing the Airbnb. She was like, but you have the money in the bank, right? And I was like, I thought in my mind, I was like, if I say no, she's not going to fuck me, because she'll think I'm just like a bum. And she's from a good Southern family, and her dad was into fracking and left her and her mom plenty of money to play with. And instead of the village, she just moved to Montmartre in Paris, which she says is even better than the village. But she was in the village before it was cool. She was in the village way before me. And then she came back to get rid of her apartment. She was finally like, she was subletting it. She was finally letting it go after like 7 or 9 years. So she moved in late 20s. She worked for Walmart for a long time. But yeah, she's a moneyed girl from a nice Southern family, an old money family with old money manners. She was like, you have money. You're just not paying the landlord. And I was like, yeah, no, I have it. It's in my bank account. I made, and then because I think she saw my tax return or something, so she saw I made good money because I was starting to post stuff online. And so she was like, just in her mind, she was like, wait, this isn't a fucking anarchist Tiffy, is it? I was like, no, I have money. Look at where I live. We live in the village. Me and you were the same. And we hooked up. And I was like, yes, I have infiltrated the rich elite of the, I don't know. It was interesting. She's a woman. She was a woman. I realized that I was starting to become accustomed to girls after I was with her. I was like, that's a woman. I don't know. Not too much about the girl shouts. We're talking about politics. Where were we at? I totally fucking. That's what it is. You hold yourself away to do some art, and then you never get the sex out of your mind. All right. I'm gonna have. You know what it is. I only have 15 more minutes in this video too, so this is gonna be a 2-video one, and I'm already tired, but it's okay. We're doing good. Angry suits have a longer political half-life than empty ones. The public feels the ebb and flows of politics as the pushing of emotional buttons meant to elicit arousal at appropriate times in the election year. The lead up to November usually heralds the march of the boogeyman, immigrants, jingoists, Christians, Muslims, atheists, white men, brown men, black men, rainbow gays, breeders, rurals, urban elite, red meat, vegan, stupid, smart, etc. Whatever can be labeled and split into a dichotomy is trumped as a cause for the anxiety of one side or the other. This year's weather underground is the next year's Christian militia. Modern climate change doomsday reprises the last generation's nuclear holocaust. But fearful anger is chaotic, unstable, self-destructive, and by necessity temporary. A state of permanent arousal and anxiety becomes a form of psychosis. That's what we're suffering right now. So, however angry you can get about that climate change denier and his SUV of death, your mind eventually has to relent. And unless instigated, your anger will probably subside. This is the weakness of organizing based on fear. The group needs constant agitation to retain its identity. Who are we mad at again? So some of this is really good. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to agree with the conclusion, but a lot of this analysis, this is cool because this is going to be useful as I make my argument this time around. Truth number 3, purposeful anger is stronger than fear. There is another form of anger that is not grounded in fear. It is anger driven by a sense of purpose, and it exhibits itself as passion. Yeah, this is the stuff I don't know if I would agree with. An example would be the fighter who draws his adrenaline not from fear of injury, but a desire to win. He deserves to win. He knows he will win. He was born to fight. This is like the young, insecure, like trusting in adrenaline. Now, older and calmer. I think 8 years later and having a little bit more success and love in my life. And like also this is like, I think some of the sexual insecurity too coming out in here. It's like that young, cocky energy comes out of insecurity, I'm pretty sure. Like now, I feel the more capability you prove in life, the less you feel like you have to prove it. And you start to recognize that some of these people you dismissed are actually calm because they're capable. They're not calm because they don't have an ability. But when you're young, I guess you think that like toughness is everything. And God helps the man that gets in the way of his destiny. His sense of purpose is the armor he forges to wear into the arena. A lover can smolder for years with the purposeful anger of love scorned or love yet to be redeemed. Requited or not, this passion can fuel a lifetime of dedication. But that's not a healthy place to leave your mind. That's the wisdom I have now. This is like steroids. It's like, yeah, it'll get you that push, but at what cost? That's interesting. That shows you that the peace that I try to practice now is earned. It's earned by trying other things. So I guess I tried this. I was probably more of a dick when I was younger. That's what people tell me, friends and other people. I'm probably more of a dick now than I will be when I'm older than now. And this is why you don't find many happy activists. They are neither fearful nor frivolous. There is no greater armor than the purposeful wrath of the oppressed, born of disenfranchisement. A true organizer finds a way to tap the reserves of the moral warrior righteously, carrying out his mission. He is not at peace, but he knows why, and he prosecutes the injustices that fuel his anger, which in turn forges his identity as a crusader. He was born for this fight. He is in love with an ideal world that he knows cannot manifest itself. But he does not fight alone. There is no greater solidarity than in a group that rises up to meet its moral obligation, a solidarity that both smothers the oppressor and gives breath to a newfound voice. In fact, the thing I wrote a year later, Complete American's Guide to Revolution, is a lot better. I knew I shouldn't end it on an angry note, and that's why everything comes back to love in the next time around. So this was a false start that I was pretty sure, shit, this in the wrong hands could be interpreted as a fucking call to like angry people yelling at each other. So yeah, but some of these ideas made it into the next one, but they were tempered with love and understanding. And now I'm tempering it with like wisdom and philosophy and spiritual traditions. So it's been evolving. I'm seeing the evolution of my ideas. This is really cool. And this is why you will find singing activists. They wish to celebrate the rebirth as new creatures. If we are going to attempt the Herculean task of erasing the democratic deficit, we're going to need to tap into this human element. See, I like the phrasing, though. That's just like when I read about how I phrased and why I'm right, that war is a regressive tax. The poor pay the most for our wars and the rich get the most back. Progressive tax mean you tax the rich more in order to correct imbalances in society. Regressive tax is the opposite, is that we're regressing. We're actually making the rich richer. And that's what war is, a form of regressive tax. So erasing the democratic deficit is a great way to describe the task ahead of us. If we're going to need to tap into this human element, the eternal spring, which can never be underestimated, never be contained, and never be exhausted, the long-suffering, indomitable heart of the abused who's been kicked all their life, yet still has the courage to stand up without any hope of recompense and say, I am a human being. I deserve respect. Look at the political machines we face as average citizens. The only way to even make a dent is through the passion of moral indignation, grounding our feet to strike the blow. All these little images, metaphors of violence. Yeah. And how did I feel, when someone struck me on the head with a metal Louisville Slugger? Then you realize the limits of violence when you're on the receiving end of that violence, right? Injustice is ended not by the condescension of those in power, but by the actions of those without. For those being victimized, exhibiting purposeful anger is a great catharsis. It constitutes a healing process of reclaiming one's dignity. If human rights, this sounds a little naive of me. If human rights are inalienable, then they cannot be granted, only asserted. Anger focuses the attention to one's identity, separating friend from enemy, within and without. This is the only truth that has ever set anyone free. Look to your pain and suffering. Trace the marks. Who persecutes you? To whom are you beholden? What makes you mad? Where's your passion? What does human dignity mean to you? This is how a lot of, it sounds ignorant of me, but this is how Bernie Sanders ends his book. This is how Hillary and those other people, they say, find your passion, and then I guess observing emotional triggers over the last couple of years, and specifically over this last year, and that human beings are more logical when we're calmer and we're more irrational, and then seeing my folks even devolve in their thinking and their rationality through being more angry. Just when they talk about politics, it's always like combative. That's the path it's easy logic. It's low-hanging fruit. Shit, I want to fucking affect political change. Let me get people riled up. But that does not increase peace in the greater system. And I finished this and I was like, I'm not so sure about it. Let me put that away and meditate on it for a little bit. And even within a year, I corrected a lot of this. Complete American's Guide to Revolution that we're going to come up with in a little bit. It was that was pretty done. When it's done, you don't go back to correct. You're like, I would write it differently maybe now, but it's as done as it's going to be. It's a good representation of my thought. Like this, I would correct a lot of this. I would take a lot of this out. In fact, it's not even salvageable. I would take some of the stuff with flash politics and some of the logic when I'm not talking about emotions, but we'll see. I still have a lot of pages. If identity, truth, purpose. Okay, we're going to do truth number 4, and then we're going to take a break. Truth number 4, purpose is born of identity. If identity is the straw for the fire of organizing, the straw for the fire, that's that Theodore Roth poetry. What is it? Reference. Oh my gosh. And disenfranchisement bonds people together, then injustice sows its own demise. That is why unjust nations unravel. They spread entropy in their societies and create a dialectic, an opposing force. Embodying the problem, they spawn their solution. When I speak of anger, I'm not calling for blind rage. I'm not advocating that people let their emotions overrun reason, but I am calling for that lump in one's throat that begins the poem. I still use that all the time. The moment of resolve that begins the journey. If you forfeit your anger, you give up the right to defend yourself. You allow yourself to be cowed when the world shouts, "Just who do you think you are? Who are you, anyways? Who are you?" When you should instead be shouting back, "I am a human being. I deserve respect." Shout with your actions. Shout with your silent confidence. However you do it, wear your passion on your sleeve. Because the powers that be cannot take away your self-worth. They can only convince you to hide it. They'll convince you with silver tongues to handle your sense of dignity gently and tuck it away somewhere safe, as if it were an antique and not the engine of your destiny. They fear your awareness like a nuclear threat. In fact, I think I got that from Frantz Fanon, talked about like the awareness of the oppressed classes and the mental confusion in their mind. In the face of injustice, self-esteem is a weapon of mass destruction. The concept of slavery is founded on hiding from man the value of things, truths which are beyond the control of any master to enslave. If you do not value your identity, you will sublimate it in bondage to another. We all have beliefs. Some are inborn, some are externally thrust upon us. If you want to find the bedrock of your dignity, dare to sift through your assumptions. So this is stuff I'm still on now. Position your feet on solid ground. Arch your back. Face the sky with open arms. Announce to the world your worth. I am a human being. I deserve respect. The world's fucked up and stuff. All right. I have 3 minutes. I won't be able to do this in 3 minutes, will I? Truth number 5. Therefore, the failure to organize is a failure of identity. In the following chapters, I'll discuss the criminalization of 3 groups of people: undocumented immigrants, homosexuals, marijuana users, and the injustices of 3 institutions: public education, correctional facilities, and the military. In each one of these examples, there exists a stark contrast: human dignity on one side, power on the other. I'll make the case that these human values should be a resource for exponentially more passion than the profit motives of the opposing forces. I'll run the numbers to show that organizationally there shouldn't even be a struggle. I'll even entertain the idea that one should not underestimate the power of greed and compare the resources on either side, the morally righteous versus the morally bankrupt. But I won't make excuses for failure. There's only one reason why such a cowardly, corrupt lot of enriched few can hold so much power over society. We let them get away with it. We do not distinguish between true friend and enemy. We do not work to establish a real identity based on our own sense of self-worth. We allow ourselves to be co-opted into an idiotic blue-red game, while the richest 1% have the greatest class consciousness and flaunt royal purple. With open information comes democratization. Pyramidal hierarchies flatten as processes are freed from bureaucratic strangleholds. Bureaucracy entrenches, progress purges. At one end of the spectrum, I speak to the passionate few who stand to be empowered, and at the other end, I paint a target on the coyotes to be purged, the privileged few who benefit from the status quo. The political war will be fought over the middle, but these catalysts stand at either pole like opposing generals. The next time you feel the shame of injustice washing over you, remember this opposing general, his sneer as he attempts to debase your inherent dignity for personal gain. Connect the unmelting ice in your stomach to his cold stare. Connect power to misery. Look in the mirror and recognize the solution that you are destined to become. Persecution has commissioned you as a general. Face your enemy and know yourself. Political organizing begins by creating a new identity, or rather reclaiming your original one. If you're having a hard time remembering, I'll do my best to jog your memory. 30 more seconds. I think what happened was I wrote Why I'm Right, which was an interpretation of Orwell. And then I got confident enough by doing that, I abandoned that in order to just write my own work. So it wasn't even so much, it was that I felt like there were some blind spots in my thinking, but also I felt like I'm confident enough now. I wrote most of that book. Let me just fucking. So this is all good writing, and it's not an interpretation. It's my own words. So congratulations, Shaz. We got to correct some of the loose logic here.